Hello, I am so excited to bring you the unauthorized, authorized audiobook of To Have and Have More, which I will be performing for you in its entirety. Think of it as like I'm reading you a bedtime story and I'm going to be uploading the chapters one by one. I can do this and upload this audio video book for free because the huge silver lining of me getting my master's back is that now I'm in charge of my own book and I hold all of the rights. So if you're willing to subject yourself to my mispronunciations and bad accents and my ability to distinguish the speaker when I'm doing dialogue out loud, I am not a voice actress and I don't claim to be. If you're willing to subject yourself to that, then you will hear it from the horse's mouth. Also, if you remember VH1 pop-up video where they would show like little bits of trivia on the screen when the music video played, I'm going to do a version of that as I'm reading this out loud, like in a DVD special features kind of way where I will give you trivia, I will give my side commentary, I will tell you about the making of the book in bits and pieces. I won't overdo it as I'm reading each chapter. If you've talked to me at all in the last 4 months, then you will know that I was very unimpressed with the way my audiobook turned out because I was completely shouldered out of the process. I never got to have a single meeting with the voice actress who, given what she had, she did a great job, so this is not about her, but I was just never allowed to talk to the producer or the director. I have no idea what people were involved. But because of that, when the audiobook was released and I listened to it the first time, I was like, this is not the right tone. This is not what my book is supposed to sound like. So this is me rectifying that and giving it to you for free because I would much rather you listen to my stumbling version of it than to one that I had no say in. And before I get into reading To Have and Have More out loud to you, a huge thank you to my husband who is filming all of this and who has had so much to have and have more in his life that he could probably recite it by heart better than I could. Thank you. To Have and Have More by Sanibel. The dedication reads, First to Tall. And the best epigraph ever, join me in hurting anyone who hurts me. Iliad, Book 9, line 801, translated by Emily Wilson. This is a line spoken by Achilles, and when I read it in the recent translation that Wilson did, I just thought that join me in hurting anyone who hurts me was the motto of this book. Nothing could be more apt. This is the prologue. Show and Tell at Sword Country Day was not your average show and tell. For starters, it was called Share and Enlighten. I'm so excited to see what Emery has brought for Share and Enlighten today. Miss Brodie's enthusiasm for teaching first grade was inexhaustible. Everyone please sit Indian style and zip it, lock it, put it in your pocket. The class mimed zipping their mouths shut as they settled onto the shaker rug. Emery stood at the front of the room with a mint-colored keepsake box in her hands. This is my adoption box, she said. I thought you were bringing your hamster, a tow-headed boy interrupted. Marina vacuumed him, Emery snapped at Brandon. She lifted the lid gingerly, and a mix of photographs, documents, and mementos were revealed. This is a picture of the orphanage in Korea where... Is your mom bringing those candies again? Matt W. asked. I like the purple ones, Callie volunteered, not the green ones. Miss Brodie used her patient voice. I know you're all excited for Emery's presentation, but remember we're supposed to wear our listening caps during Share and Enlighten. Emery continued, My parents got me when I was 6 months old. This onesie is the only... You shared and enlightened this last time, Brandon complained. You promised to bring fruit roll-up. You said we could feed him. Stop interrupting, Emery stomped her foot. I told you Marina vacuumed him. Marina had accidentally vacuumed fruit roll-up the day before Share and Enlighten. Emery had pitched a fit. She had been bragging about her pet hamster for weeks, and she was so distraught that she let her mom talk her into sharing her adoption box again. Share and Enlighten was always a bore. Moms sent their first graders with peonies, picked fresh from the garden, and just polished family heirlooms. It was a competition between mothers in which kids were merely vehicles. When Miss Brodie's class had found out that Emery was going to bring a rodent to the classroom, they'd lost their minds. This is called a hanbok, Emery said, pulling a garment out of the box. Korean people wear... It's just a dumb dress, Brandon said. Emery invoked the worst insult she had ever heard her dad use. It was the only time Emery had witnessed her mother rebuke him. You're just a public school moron. Emery, Miss Brodie exclaimed. Brandon started crying. Emery smiled innocently. She was innocent insofar as she had no idea what her words meant. Some commentary about this prologue. The only reason I wrote this prologue about show and tell is because the book was originally called Show and Tell Girl. And when I started sending it out to agents, I realized never in the book does it mention show and tell, so I needed some reason that is included in the book at all. And then when I set out to write the prologue, what you might not know about the way you get an agent is you send out your pitch, where it's like a description of your book and why you think they should represent you, but you also include in the body of the email the first 10, 15 pages. And so in a way, if the agent is at all interested in you and they're reading through your query letter and they're reading down to the part where you've pasted the first few pages of your book, it's so imperative that those first few pages like embody and sell the book in a way that is like marketing friendly. So this prologue, I really wrote it to be like this like mean, nasty humor and like terrible rich kids being awful to each other even though they're only 6 years old. And I think that was a huge part in getting this book published eventually. Chapter 1. There's no such thing as a nice rich kid. Some of them have better manners or sweeter smiles, but none of them are nice. If you're not rich and you manage to slip into their ranks, do not consider yourself accepted. Maybe you're funny or outgoing or willing to be treated like a second-class citizen, but you'll find out the hard way that you're not one of them. It might be a sweet 16 you're excluded from or a summer getaway you're not invited to, and they'll feel no embarrassment discussing it at length in your presence. New scene. Darrymore Academy, a boarding school, was a hotbed of rich kids, and Emery Hooper, one such kid, was about to lose a crucial tennis match to a girl who didn't belong there. Lila Chang was a chunky public school kid who had earned her way into Darrymore with good grades, high test scores, and parental pressure. Her dumpy appearance clashed magnificently with the pristine, newly resurfaced Darrymore courts. Match point. Emery blasted Lila's patty cake spinless serve straight into the neck. The absolute worst insult you could say to someone in tennis is that they have a patty cake serve. Before smashing her racket against the court, she remembered her last cracked frame. Her father had called her behavior unbecoming, then handed over a credit card to replace the latest Prince model. Emery restrained herself and sent a dark look toward the bleachers where her best friend was watching. Noah smiled weakly in return. Good sportsmanship was not Emery's domain. She had taken private lessons since she was 9 and was deeply offended that her run to the varsity team had been cut short by a girl wearing cheap running shoes and a surplus 15 pounds. The tryout was a boon and she'd blown it. Now freshman year would kick off with the stench of mediocrity and unflattering JV uniforms. Emery could already hear her mother's soothing words. As long as you tried your best, there's no shame in JV. You should be proud you made it so far in tryouts. It was true, freshmen were rarely considered, but Emery wasn't going to be grateful for something she felt entitled to. It had slipped from her grip so fast. She had already planned a blasé delivery when telling her friends, especially Candace, that she'd made varsity. Emery approached the coach to report the score. 4-6-2-6, Emery said. I lost. She searched the coach's face for surprise. She liked him less when she didn't find it. The freshman showdown, he said. Which one are you? Emery Hooper. He'd noted the score on his clipboard. Emery gestured miserably in the direction of the JV courts. I guess I should go over there? Let's see. Coach Norton examined the score sheet. The varsity roster is full, but I don't have a single freshman. I'm going to give you what's your name? Emery hadn't noticed Lila sidle up beside her, but there she was, breathing through her nose at max volume. Lila mumbled her name. You two can be alternates if you want, Coach Norton said. You'll train with the varsity team, but you won't play matches unless someone is sick, and you'll only play doubles. If you hate the idea of benchwarming and JV sound— No, Emery burst out. No? Sorry, I want to be an alternate. I don't want to go to JV. This is based on my real freshman year experience. I was an alternate. Great, and how about Emery? No, he checked his clipboard. The other one. I gotta get that straight. Lily, what about you? Lila had crossed her arms over her stomach. She looked toward Emery, seeking encouragement. Emery avoided the pathetic gaze and willed Lila to reject the offer. A full season of JV singles is nothing to shake a stick at, Coach Norton said. Lila stammered. I want to be an alternate too. 2 for 2, Coach Norton said, scribbling on his clipboard. Lila beamed at Emery, who, in return, let just enough disgust leak into her expression to kill Lila's smile. Emery assumed a placid look before addressing the coach. So, see you tomorrow? Coach Norton nodded. Congrats. It didn't feel anything like Emery had fantasized. Splitting her stats with Lila diminished any sense of accomplishment. On top of that, she resented that she would have to work extra hard to distance herself from Lila so the older girls didn't mix them up. Why, of all people, did the other freshman have to be another Asian girl? The coach was already struggling to keep them separate in his mind. Emery suspected that he'd offered both of them a spot on the team simply because he could not remember which one had won. Emery felt Lila hovering as she zipped up her bag, but she refused to be lured into conversation. She had already sized Lila up and had nothing to say to her. The Lila breed was familiar to Emery. They went to Kumon after school. They made duct tape wallets. They didn't roll their Sophies. Their parents were professors and IT professionals and mid-level managers who cheaped out on cable. Their moms bought the Martha Stewart collection at Kmart and shopped for bargains at Loehmann's. They gave Ferrero Rocher chocolates as teacher gifts. Their cars didn't have heated seats and their bathrooms didn't have heated floors. They lived a full zip code or more away from Emery's side of town in a different world. Come on, Noah, Emery called to her friend and dumped the contents of her Propel bottle into the grass violently. That's a throwback. I don't think I've seen a Propel for sale anywhere, but that is what I always drank and never Gatorade. Noah scampered over obediently and gave Lila a once-over without saying hello. Lila waited expectantly, but there was no introduction. Instead, Emery hefted her bag over her shoulder and walked away. "Let me carry that," Noah said, falling into step with her. "Noah," Emery complained. She was too deflated to tussle over the bag, so she let him take it. Noah thought carrying it made people think he was an athlete, but Emery thought it made him look like her caddy. "Did you hear what Coach Norton said?" Emery asked. Noah had been eavesdropping dutifully. "It's good, right? You got what you wanted." "Hardly," Emery spat. "You should have won, obviously," he said, "but that Chinese girl lopped everything. She was a pusher." Noah could be such a brown-noser, but he was right about Lila being a pusher. Emery's coach always said it was a well-known stereotype that Asian and Indian players opted for the weighted-out strategy. Instead of taking a risk and going for a winner, they'd moonball it into the center of the court and wait for you to make the error. Impatient by nature, Emery had lost matches to pushers by rushing the net too aggressively. Noah added, "I think she wanted to play JV, but then she just copied you. She was staring at you so hard when the coach was talking." "That's because she's Asian," Emery said, with a lilt of duh in her voice. "They all think that means we're automatic friends." Emery grumbled, but she hoped the assumption might work in her favor. She was secretly obsessed with the tennis team captain, Ryan Kim. Ryan was ranked top 10 in New Jersey and had been Darrymore's first seed since her freshman year. She was all tight racerbacks and high ponytail and popular. She had a one-handed backhand and cursed in Korean. Her boyfriend was getting recruited by colleges for lacrosse. In between drills, she texted on her BlackBerry, and Coach Norton never admonished her for it. Emery glanced down at her own white tennis skirt. It was obvious and infantile. Ryan wore tiny black shorts that sat low on her hips and revealed a sliver of midriff each time she struck the ball. Emery made a mental note to start doing series of 5 every day and to buy some black dry fit. "What counts is that you made varsity," Noah said. No one will know what alternate means." Emery rolled her eyes. Noah was all about riding her coattails. Just like Jerry. They convinced themselves that Emery had lost the match because she was better than Lila, and they believed it. That was the sort of best friendship they had, the kind that believes dissent is betrayal and pinky promises are contracts. Chapter 2. Lila wasn't offended by Emery's abrupt departure. In fact, she hadn't picked up on the snub. It made sense that Emery wasn't upset about losing the match. Warming up with her had been thoroughly intimidating. Beautiful form, so much pace, Emery looked varsity. Her pleated skirt and petite figure fit in with the other Darrymore bodies that did gyrotonic workouts with their mothers and took squash lessons for cardio. The ones whose home gyms were as well equipped as fitness centers and whose personal trainers worked with professional athletes and models. Lila vowed to cut back on sugar-loaded grass jelly drinks as she returned alone to the freshman dorm. She had been hoping to introduce Emery to her friends, but it could wait. Over the summer, Lila had pledged to become outgoing, to make new friends and not rely on the handful of girls she knew from middle school. But once she was surrounded by Darrymorians who wore bronzer and talked about grinding, she lost her nerve and clung to those she knew. Her middle school clique totaled 8, of which 4 had been accepted to Darrymore. Lila shuddered to think how it would feel to be in the cursed half of the group. Her mom was still consoling her rejected friends' moms with unannounced house calls, and bow. Mom was always in a great mood on the days she performed these good deeds. Her friends were in the quiet study room that no one else ever used. A soft hello to Cassie and Jenny was allowed, but Lila refrained from interrupting Annie. No one had ever doubted that Annie would get into Darrymore. The rest of their group was a crapshoot, but Annie was considered a certainty. She was effortlessly smart and poured all her energy into accomplishing measurable and praiseworthy things. She was the first chair violin in the Darrymore Orchestra and the only freshman on the mathletes team. It was a given that Annie would go to Harvard, which her parents would announce if you happened to make eye contact with them. But they were equally vocal in drawing attention to what they believed was Annie's greatest flaw. When guests came over, they often gasped and brought their hands to their mouths when Annie appeared. "So dark," family friends muttered in greeting, shaking their heads sympathetically. "Hello, Auntie," Annie would say through gritted teeth. "Hello, Uncle." Annie's mother bought skin-bleaching creams from Korea, but they stained Annie's face unevenly and burned her skin. Her mom begged that she use them anyway. "But you are so dark," her mom would say. "If you use creams, maybe skin like Lila, so white, so pretty." My Asian accent, I haven't perfected it yet. I'm gonna do it next time there's the mom saying something. Lila never understood why Annie was hot and cold to her. When Annie came to a stopping point in her bio textbook, Lila was allowed to speak. "I made the varsity team," she said. "I'm an alternate, so I won't play matches, but I get to train with them." "Does that even count as varsity?" Annie asked. "I think so. It just means if you don't play matches, then how are you on the team?" Lila flushed. "It sounds like you're just a bench warmer," Annie said, twisting the yellow Livestrong bracelet around her wrist. "Congratulations, though." Jenny and Cassie chimed in with their congrats. "Thanks," Lila said. "You're going to make so many friends," Cassie said. "Are there any other freshmen?" Jenny asked. Just one, Emery Hooper. Annie's head whipped towards Lila. The adopted girl? Lila nodded. The squash girl? Cassie asked. They had known of Emery before they saw the Hooper Squash Center at Darrymore. She was famous in their town as the first daughter of the wealthier neighboring town. Emery was in the local paper often, for selling the most Girl Scout cookies or winning a tennis tournament or giving a kid's perspective on the best books to read this summer. They had seen her once at the mall, loaded down with shopping bags and her parents' undivided attention. I didn't say what mall it is, but in my mind, it's the mall at Short Hills. The freshman biology curriculum was an unforeseen point of contention at the Darrymore Board of Trustees meeting. A perfunctory update about a new fashionable science unit turned into a heated debate. Calculate Your Carbon Footprint was an exercise where students would tally up their energy usage and confront their impact on the environment. It would be followed by a lecture on ways to decrease carbon emissions and a pledge to reduce waste. The initiative met huge resistance. It was denounced as political propaganda. What was the educational value? An older board member called it communism. I'm wondering now if I should have called that socialism, but the curriculum won out in the end. Headmaster Runster references notes. Exeter and Andover have been teaching this for 2 years already. I don't have to remind you how far our endowment is lagging behind. I didn't know if I would be allowed to say Exeter and Andover, but no one caught that. No one told me that I wasn't allowed to include it, and the only thing that was censored was I was not allowed to say the name of my own prep school that this is very loosely based on, but so be it. The comment was met with sober murmurs. Exeter had just broken $1 billion. Darrymore was slumming it in the 100 millions. Calculate Your Carbon Footprint was a humble brag bonanza. Do yachts count as vehicles? Am I supposed to include my maids as part of my family if they're living? For the number of nights per week that I eat meat/seafood, what if you catch the seafood yourself so there's no bycatch? We have solar panels at our ranch. Doesn't that make my footprint smaller? When someone asked about a timeshare, a snicker went around the room. When someone asked about a cruise, there were loud guffaws. Not everyone at Darrymore was the right kind of rich. This reminds me of Rich People Who Rich Right. And if you didn't know how to pretend, ridicule was an efficient teacher. The hapless student who asked about the cruise took heed, and next time cruises were mentioned in his presence, he would lead the scorn. Students closed their eyes, imagining their vast beige homes and estimated square footage. Wait, a girl exclaimed. I can check online. My house was just in Town and Country. Emery peeked at Candace's screen. She'd been to countless sleepovers and swims at Candace's house. It looked just like her own. Deep pantries, glossy banisters, built-ins filled with books arranged by decorators, gratuitous kitchen islands. Everything was designed to hide signs of living. TVs disappeared down into consoles. Trash cans were camouflaged amongst cabinetry. Bread garages concealed sourdough petards. It was a veldt of good taste and prosperity, much like the Darrymore campus. But even Darrymore's sculpted lushness, its well-manicured everywhere and rarefied everything, that was the only line that I think made it from my very original manuscript. And when I presented the first scene to my MFA, the only thing that did well in workshop was manicured everywhere and rarefied everything. So that made it into the final book. Was not enough to take Emery's mind off Lila Chang. An ugly blight on the surface of Emery's otherwise perfect life, Lila was a dark spot that Emery's mother would have lasered off during a same-day appointment. After filling in her carbon footprint data, Emery was slightly surprised to find herself responsible for 6 times the carbon output of the average individual. Candace clocked in at 8 times the average. They both expressed unhappiness and disbelief, but some pride slipped through. It's not my fault my dad collects sports cars, Candace said, sipping from a Diet Lemon Snapple. New scene. Emery's parents were older than the median age of her peers' parents, and richer too. If anyone asked about Emery's ethnic heritage, her parents gave icy responses and declared the offender ill-mannered. They loved her so much as their own that they were blind to her Koreanness. She was their only child. This was inspired by the Robert Pattinson movie Good Time. It's a Safdie brothers movie, and one of the 2 brothers who commit these bank robberies, he is on the spectrum, but his brother kind of doesn't admit that to himself, and that being blind to someone's limitations is not that being Korean is a limitation, but that was very much what inspired this idea. With no siblings to hog the bathroom or steal Ella Moss tunics from, Emery was accustomed to getting ready alone. But she was stumped by whether or not to wear the varsity uniform for the first match of the season. Being an alternate made Emery feel like an imposter, and she worried that idling on the bleachers in full regalia would scream poser. But if she wore class dress, she might be accused of not being a good team player, a familiar and true criticism. That's very me. Emery decided to risk being classified as a wannabe and wore the uniform. When she exited her room, Lila was there waiting. Ready to head over to the courts? Lila wore an ill-fitting white polo with 2 blue jeans and black Converse sneakers. Emery felt instant confidence in her uniform decision. Do you think I should change into my uniform too? Lila asked. I figured since we're not playing, we didn't need to, but you're probably right. Lila nervous laughed through her sentences, which made her difficult to understand. Huh? Emery said. I'm going to the courts. She slung her tennis bag across her back. I'll be really fast, I promise, Lila said. I'm not going to be late for the first match. Do you think I should change? No one told me to wear it. I made my own decision. Lila's face was pained. It was clear she desperately wanted to change, but knew Emery would leave without her. As they walked, Emery dragged her feet and tried to keep her distance. She stared at Lila's back fat, which was accentuated by a too-tight sports bra. It would not surprise Emery to learn that Lila didn't own an underwire bra. Lila's white shirt had been laundered with something red, and the result was a pinkish tinge of sloppiness. Her Ashley Simpson-inspired haircut was atrocious and mullet-like. Think Ashley Simpson Pieces of Me era. Pretending to be distracted by her phone, Emery walked even slower, but she hadn't accounted for Lila's indefatigable patience. When they came to the aisle, Lila halted. Aisle is spelled I-S-L-E. I hope that's clear. What is it? Emery asked, though she already knew. It was rumored that freshmen were not allowed to traverse the well-kept lawn, which was surrounded and allegedly surveilled by upper-form dormitories. Unfortunately, the aisle, capital I, happened to be on the shortest route from the freshman dormitory to the courts. For fear of looking gullible, Emery hadn't asked her teammates if the rumor was true. She usually elected to cross the aisle, but her heart always raced as she power walked through. Emery stepped onto the lawn. Wait! Lila grasped Emery's arm. I really think we should go around. Go ahead, Emery pulled away from Lila's grip. I cross it every day. Wait, please, Lila said, taking a deep breath. Just give me a second. Emery made sure no one was watching as Lila took several loud breaths. Can we jog it? Lila asked. Ew, no. But I don't want to get in trouble, and Ryan is really scary, and if we get on our bad side, Lila was talking faster and higher. Fine. Jogging had the effect of jouncing Emery's enormous bag against her back as they hurried across the aisle. The only reason I used the word jouncing was because when I showed my thesis professor a draft of this book and we were talking about another campus novel called A Separate Piece, his only comment about that was he had never seen the word jounce in a book besides A Separate Piece, so I was like, I'm determined to get the word jounce into this book. When they reached the bleachers, Ryan's scornful expression was the first thing they saw. Her beauty, coupled with her masculine name, suggested a physical and spiritual superiority that made her an effective captain. Emery had heard that Ryan's boyfriend had recorded her voicemail message, "You've reached Ryan, bitches," and she recorded his. Could anything be more romantic? Why the hell were you running? Wait, that wasn't good. This is Ryan speaking. Why the hell were you running? The back of Emery's neck burned. Ryan had only spoken to her twice before, once to congratulate her flatly for making the varsity team, and again to remind her to pick up the team's uniform, a freshman chore. Emery and Lila spoke at once, cutting each other off. I thought we were late. Freshmen aren't allowed. Ryan's hands were on her hips, and a silver charm bracelet dangled from her left wrist. Her disdain turned into cruel pleasure after her sidekick, Sarah, whispered something in her ear. It was undoubtedly a reminder of the aisle rumor that was passed down from generation to generation. Ryan stood in front of Emery and Lila, her face stony. You crossed the aisle? She asked. Lila launched into an apology, but Ryan cut her off with a sharp gesture, charm bracelet clinking softly. Ryan wearing a charm bracelet is like a low-key allusion to Massey Block in The Click. They always talk about her charm bracelet, and she's very much a Queen Bee character like Ryan. Ryan says, "Are you insane? Don't you know what happens if you're caught?" Supposedly, freshmen who illicitly crossed the aisle had to perform a song and dance at chapel. Chapel was the daily all-school meeting that could consist of anything from a snooze-inducing presentation on biodiversity in the Korean DMZ to a provocative dance by the senior boys promoting the bonfire. The regular features were student government notices, birthday shout-outs, and expulsion announcements. Emery swallowed. It couldn't possibly be true. Ryan wouldn't subject them to that level of public humiliation. "Hello?" Ryan snapped. Both girls nodded. "You get out of jail this time free. But next time," Ryan's voice trailed off threateningly. Sarah giggled. End scene. Coach Norton took no notice of Emery's uniform. He took no notice of her whatsoever. He went down the team sheet, reminding each player what she was supposed to focus on during her match. For Ryan, he had only one word: ferocity, after which he growled. She nodded vigorously, but when he turned his back, Ryan and Sarah snickered. They made cat claws with their hands and pretended to scratch at one another. Emery would have preferred to watch the matches alone, but Lila sat beside her on the bleachers. The coach was giving a pep talk to the players on the first court, and Emery watched the huddle, feeling envious and self-conscious. I'm going to go to the bathroom, Lila said. Do you want to come? No, Emery said with more force than she intended. While Lila was in the restroom, a Darrymore photographer arrived at the courts. Yearbook photos, Ryan called, dabbing on lip gloss. Seniors only first. She stood in front of the center net strap, and Sarah nudged another player out of the way to stand beside her. Now everyone, come on, Ryan said. 2 rows by height. Make sure your straps aren't showing. I told you to wear a sports bra, Sarah. Sarah had worn her most dramatic push-up bra. Ryan gestured impatiently at Emery. Come on. Me? Emery scrambled onto the court, and Ryan maneuvered her into the first row. Emery knelt on the hard court and felt Ryan's manicured hand rest on her shoulder. The photographer got into position. Wait, Ryan said. Emery breathed a sigh of relief. The captain had noticed that Lila was missing. Like me, girls, Ryan instructed, one hand on the shoulder of the person in front of you. The team repositioned themselves, and the photographer snapped away. Ryan checked the photos and indicated one that she liked most to the photographer. She said something that made him laugh. Ryan clapped. Let's win out there today. Emery was brushing sandy debris off her knees when she noticed that Lila had returned. She wasn't sure how much Lila had seen and didn't ask, but it was hard to ignore Lila's pitiful expression. It wasn't Emery's fault that Lila had terrible timing and even worse luck, and it wasn't her job to tell Ryan that Lila was missing. But then why did Emery keep thinking about Kitty Genovese and the idle bystanders her history class condemned? They watched Ryan and her opponent go groundstroke to groundstroke until Lila broke the tense silence. Do you think Ryan hates me? She asked. Emery's head continued to move back and forth following the ball. She doesn't like or dislike you. We're freshmen. She doesn't think about us. Yeah, but it seems like she likes you a little, at least. But to me, being liked is overrated. Who cares what other people think? That was obviously Emery. Ryan warmed up her serve. She grunted loudly each time the racket pronated into the ball. Oh my gosh, the copy editor gave me such a hard time about the word pronate. And I was like, just Google tennis and pronate. Like, it's a real verb, I promise. Yeah, Lila nodded. You're right. Emery was relieved to get out of the conversation so easily. Platitudes never worked on Noah. He always demanded his reassurances with a heavy dose of sincerity. His insecurity ran deep, and he had a kindred spirit in the girl warming up on court 2, chugging a hot pink vitamin water. Sarah was plain in features, ideas, and personality. She identified as blonde, but her hair was mousy brown. Sarah craved attention, but didn't know what to do when she got it. From time to time, she demanded Ryan show her respect, but mostly allowed herself to be abused. She failed to understand that her role was sidekick, and anything more central would pose a challenge to her abilities. Between every point, Sarah looked over to Ryan's court, but her best friend never returned the glance. Emery swallowed guiltily, remembering how Lila had averted her eyes when she saw the team wrapping up the photo. But Lila wasn't in uniform. She wouldn't have been allowed to pose anyway. End scene. At the end of Ryan's first set, a rotund man watching the match caught Emery's eye. She craned her neck to follow him as he walked to his car. Is that someone you know? Lila asked. It's my chef, Emery said, confused. She went over to his sedan, where he was looking in the back seat for something. Chef Eric? He stood up with a baseball cap in hand and took a moment to register who she was. Oh my, Emery, he said, smiling. How good to see you. What are you doing here? My daughter's on the team, Gracie. I didn't know you had kids. I'm not doing this dialogue well, sorry. Those were 2 people having a conversation. Gracie was a forgettable girl who played doubles with another junior. Emery didn't know Chef Eric's last name, so she would never have put 2 and 2 together. He had worked for the Hoopers for over 10 years. I thought my mom sent you or something. Off duty today, he said. How are you liking Darrymore? I'm sure you've made plenty of friends already. Emery shrugged. It's good. I already knew a bunch of people. You work for the Perkinses, too, right? Candace is my year. What court are you on? I'll cheer you on when Gracie's match is over. I'm an alternate. Emery stuck her tongue out. I practice with the team, but I don't play matches. It sucks. I'm sure you'll get plenty of match play next season. You're only a freshman. Gracie barely made the team as a junior. If I don't play singles next year, I'll kill myself. Chef Eric laughed with professional elan. That used to be Chef Eric laughed professionally, but then my editor told me that it made it sound like he gets paid to laugh, so I made the change. With professional elan. I'm sure it won't come to that. It was nice to see you, Emery said suddenly. I'll tell my parents you say hi. She returned to the bleachers and wondered if Gracie was on scholarship. Emery's mom's therapist had a son who'd graduated from Darrymore a few years ago. Her dad's cardiologist had a niece who was also an alum. It was possible for Emery to run into her family's attorney and interior decorator during Parents' Weekend, but she hadn't realized she might also run into their chef. People like the Hoopers were always friendly with their chefs and ski instructors and landscapers, and they claimed great affection for their nannies and maids and tutors. I relate to that personally because as a SA tutor for college admission stuff, I feel this like limited affection. But their real friends were those with whom they shared a pool guy or antiques dealer. Friends were those they'd run into at a showroom for high-end bathroom fixtures, or at the milliner for a new sun hat, or at the farm share for vegetable pickup. You have a chef? Lila asked. Only during the summer, Emery said. My mom doesn't like to cook when she's on island. Ryan switched sides of the court with her opponent. What does your mom do? Lila asked. Emery turned slowly. It was the first time she had looked at Lila since the match began. Should I redo that part? Okay. Ryan switched sides of the court with her opponent. What does your mom do? Lila asked. Emery turned slowly. It was the first time she had looked at Lila since the match began. She does being my mom. Emery's face mingled concern with disbelief, like she couldn't be certain of Lila's sanity. Right. Lila nodded heartily. She took a big swig from a red Gatorade to cover up her blunder and sloshed it down the front of her shirt. In one swift movement, Emery pulled a sweatshirt out of her bag and shoved it into Lila's lap. You can give it back to me whenever, after washing it. It was a knockabout sweatshirt. Emery wore it after matches when she was still sweaty, and only remembered to launder it occasionally. She kept it shoved in the bottom of her tennis bag with her backup iPod. Knockabout culture was big at Darrymore. Families had knockabout cars for learning how to drive, they had knockabout dinnerware for dining outdoors, they had knockabout computers for LimeWire and the risks that came with pirated MP3s. Everything was expendable. Emery's knockabout boots were last season's that she no longer liked. She'd worn them in a muddy field for a photo shoot with Noah and Candace. Knockabout digital cameras and peacoats and knockabout velour sweatsuits to wear while tie-dyeing knockabout white t-shirts. It was a caste system of belongings. Everything became knockabout eventually. Knockabout sunglasses and ribbon belts and tennis rackets. And friends. Lila didn't have knockabout belongings. She pulled Emery's sweatshirt over her head gratefully. It was stifling, but better to sweat than to be seen with an enormous pink splotch on her chest. New scene. Where did you get that? Annie's forehead creased with contempt when she saw Lila's borrowed sweatshirt. Emery lent it to me, Lila responded casually. I was cold. Her friends were seated in the quiet study room in the same configuration they always occupied. Emery Hooper? Jenny asked, eyes widening. She leaned in to scrutinize the faded crew neck. Cassie joined her. It's an ugly color, Annie said. It looks like diluted period blood. Rich people like muted colors, Lila said. I like it, Cassie said. It looks classy. So you're an expert on rich people now, Annie said, talking over Cassie, and I guess you go to Nantucket too? She indicated the white letters on Lila's chest. We won all of our matches, Lila said stiffly. Yay, Jenny said, clapping her fingertips together. Was the captain nicer to you today? Cassie asked. Uh-huh, Lila said. She's really cool, actually. Underneath the table, Lila fiddled with the hem of Emery's sweatshirt. It looks like one of those veil sweatshirts that Emery and all of them wear, Annie said, still staring. What's veil? Cassie asked. I think it's a club or something, Jenny said. You guys don't know anything, Annie said. It's where rich people ski. They might as well get sweatshirts that say rich in capital letters. Lila laughed in spite of herself. Chapter 4. Emery and Noah had become official best friends at the beginning of 6th grade when the phenomenon overtook their lives. Best friends were coupling up everywhere, and not to be left behind, they clung to each other. Emery was secretly jealous of the pairs of girls who belted out unwritten and wore matching necklaces, each donning one half of a golden heart. She and Noah made friendship bracelets from embroidery floss, but they felt like an inadequate display compared to the airbrush sweatshirts with BFF in fluorescent pink that her peers bought at the boardwalk in Cape May. They'd met in Latin class. Noah was a new kid, and Emery's mom, president of the PTA, had made her promise to introduce herself to at least one new student and make them feel welcome. Noah's narrow shoulders had tensed up when Emery took the seat beside him and asked to borrow a pencil. He passed one over that was covered in bite marks. Emery noticed that Noah's posture was lousy, but his handwriting was beautiful, an elegant cursive. She explained that her mom had demanded she be nice to a new kid, and he was the first one she had come across. Her frankness made him fear her a little and trust her a lot. End scene. In 8th grade, Emery told Noah she was going somewhere better for high school, a boarding school. They were eating Nerds ropes and splitting headphones. Noah turned down the volume on She Will Be Loved. Emery didn't know that Darrymore's grounds were designed by Frederick Law Olmsted, or that the school was the executor of Thornton Wilder's literary estate. Both of those things are true about Lawrenceville. Or that it had an apiary. That I made up. She just knew it was revered and respected, and like all things revered and respected, resented. When Emery toured Darrymore with her parents, her mother said it was the type of school where someone like Emery belonged. The humanities buildings were red sandstone with ivy-choked porticos. The STEM tower's endless glass reflected Darrymore's shining egotism in all directions. The football stadium was lighted, and so were the tennis courts. Students enjoyed open skate every weekend at the ice rink, and upon graduation were granted lifetime memberships to the golf course. The grounds embodied the word campus, with rich brick hues and winding paths and plush grass that whispered echoes of an era when scholarship kids were forced to be waitstaff and serve racks of lamb to their classmates. In the school pamphlet, the Darrymore grounds crew said their aim was to curate a sylvan atmosphere that complements the nourishing intellectual environment. On the cover of the prospectus was a girl reading The Fountainhead in the shade of an enormous Osage orange tree whose leaves were every color of autumn. Emery knew that her place was inside Darrymore's gates, and nothing would keep her out, especially not when her father was a trustee. In Mr. Hooper's day, Darrymore didn't have a television studio or a ceramic studio or a Wii in every dormitory. It didn't admit women or black or Jewish students. My dad went there, Emery told Noah, and my grandfather. It's called Darrymore. Noah knew the school. It was only a half-hour driving distance from their middle school. He had passed its wrought iron gates many times, but never imagined that he might know someone who attended. It looked unfriendly to him. Everything was so large and formal-looking. "What's your backup plan?" Noah asked. "For what?" Emery said. "For if you don't get in." Emery frowned. "Why wouldn't I?" Noah's anxious face split into a smile. "Right. Come with me." Noah gaped. "My dad can get you in," Emery said, settling the matter. End scene. "Lila listens to classical music when she studies," Emery said. "Candace told me. The rooms are next to each other. It's supposed to make you smarter or something." "Does it work?" Noah asked, through a mouth of saffron rice. "Maybe I should try it." "No way, it's bullshit. Listen, though." Emery reached over and flicked a grain of rice that had stuck to Noah's cheek. She missed the team photo. It was so awkward because she saw us take it without her. "Did you do it on purpose?" "I didn't do it. She missed it." A crush of boys wearing pinnies entered the dining hall quoting, "Can I have your number?" and reeking of sweat. That is the Mad TV sketch, if you want to look it up. It was the Darrymore soccer team, still ripe from practice. "Ooh, look," Noah said. "Shh," Emery scolded. She glanced over at a boy that Noah had almost talked her into poking on Facebook. His name was Scott Wynand. He had smiled at her once. Noah began, "If you don't get a date to homecoming—" "Shut up," she said. "I'll have one." "I was being nice. I was going to say if you don't get asked, then I'll go with you." "What an honor." "But if someone asks you," Noah stared conspicuously at Scott, "I'll accept my fate. It's my destiny to be lonely forever." Singleness was one of Noah's many unhealthy fixations. Emery never knew exactly what sort of reassurance he wanted, so she usually deflected. It was not lost on Emery that Noah was the only boy consistently allowed to join all girls' sleepovers. It was as if the parents had tacitly agreed there was nothing to worry about. "It's not your fate," she said. "The dance isn't until October anyway. That's forever. Plus, I bet a lot of people won't have dates. For instance, Lila." Noah's eyes flashed. "We should get that Chinese guy to ask her out." "Which one?" "The one from Latin class." "Raymond?" All the international students at Darrymore selected English names so their teachers wouldn't have to foot slog through foreign sounds. It was supposed to be an act of mercy to both parties. "Raymond," Noah repeated, pronouncing a decisive N. "And his best friend Arnold," Emery added. "Arnold?" Noah feigned confusion. "Arnold," Emery insisted. They cackled. There were a number of botched names like these. Boy named Quince, a girl named Alisor, that is my real Taiwanese grandma's actual English name. The registrar was either too polite to correct the foreign students or simply indifferent. The names were sniggered at and always spoken with a hint of skepticism, even by the teachers. "Raymond's like Chinese," Emery said, "from China." "So? Lila's from here." Noah raised his eyebrows, unconvinced. "What's her real name?" "Like I know." Noah sang, "Matchmaker, matchmaker, make me a match." They giggled malevolently. "A project." Emery's voice went up, dangerous and innocent at the same time. See, that's like the bonus feature you're getting because the audiobook actress did not sing it. I sang it for you, even though I have a terrible voice. A project. Emery's voice went up, dangerous and innocent at the same time, helping a tragic, lonely girl find love. Noah laughed, and Emery was glad to see him emerge from his self-pitying rut. The best way to get him out of his own head was to sick him on someone else. Chapter 5. Lila's study hall ritual began with her filling her Nalgene in the kitchenette at the end of the hall. Next, she hung her Do Not Disturb sign on her doorknob and turned Hayden on. Wait, is it Hayden or Hayden? Finally, she pulled on the Nantucket crew neck and stood in front of the mirror. The only possession she and Emery had in common was Javiana's flip-flops. So on the evenings she felt self-indulgent, Lila would slide the rubber sandals on and imagine how it felt to be Emery Hooper. It felt good to be rich. It felt good to wear $30 flip-flops as shower shoes instead of having to argue with a mother who insisted that the dollar store ones were perfectly adequate. It felt good to think things like, "Which immaculate tennis outfit should I wear today?" Or, "I hope Candace Perkins doesn't invite me to another boring tea with her mom." It felt good to pretend that when she got to the dining hall, there would be a sea of people who wanted to sit with her. Lila sucked in her stomach. She and Emery didn't look that dissimilar. The sweatshirt was oversized, so it hid their weight difference. Lila leaned into her smudged over the door mirror and examined her face closely. She turned profile and scanned the pores on the side of her nose. Her blackheads were numerous and dense. No matter how often she squeezed, they came back immediately. Through the thin dormitory walls, Lila could hear a bunch of girls and Candace's double. Candace had recently begun taking guitar lessons, and the only songs she knew were Before He Cheats and American Pie. Her halting playing was accompanied by bursts of laughter and off-key singing. Lila thought she could hear Emery's voice above the rest. She turned her attention back to her clogged pores and wondered if Emery used those creams and serums that were sold on the first floor of department stores. Most likely. Lila's mom's only splurge was Shiseido sunscreen, which she used to protect that which she was most proud of, her fair skin. Mrs. Chang used it sparingly and spread it assiduously on her face, making sure not to waste any product. Emery used the same sunscreen sloppily on her legs and arms, throwing the bottle away when there was certainly more left inside. Lila pictured her mother's Shiseido bottle inverted on the bathroom counter to drain every last drop. After an hour and a half of focused studying, there was a knock at Lila's door. "Ready?" Jenny's voice asked. "Coming." Lila took one last glance in the mirror and set her face in a bitchy expression, resuming her Emery impression. But her face returned to its natural, slightly scared position when she opened her door and saw Annie scowling. "Why are you obsessed with that sweatshirt?" "I'm cold," Lila said. "Aren't you supposed to give it back?" "I haven't done laundry yet." "Come on, guys," Jenny said. "I reserved the big TV, and I don't want someone to take it from us again." Annie left it at a dirty look. Lila unclenched her fists. She swore to herself that one more rude question from Annie would have elicited an eruption. When they got to the main common room, it smelled like acetone. Candace and Emery were watching Gossip Girl, which I've never seen, and trying to tie cherry stems into knots with their tongues while their nails dried. Lila hid behind Annie to conceal her crew neck, but neither Candace nor Emery looked in their direction. Lila and Jenny waited to see what Annie would do. "Let's just go to the upstairs TV room," Annie mumbled. They went to the empty bedroom that hadn't been assigned since a girl hanged herself there in the year 2000. Jenny put her DVD of My Neighbor Totoro into the player, and they crowded together on a sofa that felt damp and smelled like summer garbage. That's a shout out for my little sister, whose favorite movie is Totoro, and she carried around a little Totoro doll until second grade. New scene. Emery and Noah were waiting for Latin to start when a voice in the hallway yelled, "Kobe!" and an empty bottle clattered into the trash can by the classroom door. The voice's owner sat beside Emery and belched. Flyaway hair and loudness were Errol Hewitt's signatures. Errol was the type of boy Noah wished he could be: boisterous, athletic, oblivious. The word cocksure was invented for him. Errol was one of a few freshman boys to have made the varsity soccer team, and once he found out that Emery was a fellow varsity athlete, he was a willing friend. Noah was already self-conscious about his androgynous build, and next to Errol, he looked even slimmer. Errol played defense, and he was built for it. Noah was handsome and well-coiffed, but his neatness was that of someone well-trained by his mother. Errol was taller, smarter, and scruffier than a 14-year-old boy should be. Noah was not thrilled when Errol from Latin became just Errol so quickly. Noah was frantically reviewing his translation when Errol twisted open a new Arizona iced tea. I kept using vitamin water, so I had to change it up. "Was that due today?" Errol asked, taking a huge gulp. "Uh-huh," Emery said. "Shit, I forgot to do it. We stayed up until 3 playing FIFA." "Who's we?" "Me and Scott and—" Mr. Arthur entered, and Emery thought about how she would never start a list with herself. Mr. Arthur's accent was unapologetically Bostonian and his humor wicked, fully translatable into both Latin and Greek. Classics masters generally fall into one of two categories, villain or jester. Mr. Arthur was the jester sort. Though many Darrymore teachers had taught for years at the school, they were mere tenants compared with Mr. Arthur, who had spent the majority of his 68 years in his first-floor classroom teaching the ancients. Force-fed Virgil is as much a part of boarding school as dress code, chapel, and Saturday classes. "We're going to learn something today," he grumbled, voice hoarse from his mid-morning cigar. "For a change. Who's first?" Emery wanted to raise her hand, but the idea of being thought over-eager kept it at her side. "Hewitt," Mr. Arthur barked, "read Catullus 51 and give me some passion." "The whole thing?" Errol asked. "Up to Lesbia." Errol, who had leaned his chair back dangerously far, brought it down to all fours. For the first few lessons, he could not contain his laughter at the name Lesbia, but he had gotten over it. This was a real problem in my freshman year Latin class. "All right," Errol said, rubbing his hands together. "Let's see. What page?" His book looked brand new, spine uncracked, even though it was the third week of the semester. But Errol was not suspected for a moment. His translation was excellent, and Mr. Arthur praised his poetic license. Noah was called on next, and his prepared translation was stumbling in comparison to Errol's sight reading. "Leisure?" Noah hazarded. "No, pleasure. Pleasure destroyed cities? Civilizations? Pleasure destroyed civilizations." Noah's voice trailed off, and Mr. Arthur moved on to the next student without remark. When the bell rang at the end of the hour, Noah nudged Emery before clearing his throat. "Hey, Raymond," he called. The startled international student looked up from across the Harkness table. Noah had never spoken to him before, let alone addressed him by name. "Me?" Raymond asked. "I'm pretty sure you're the only Raymond," Noah sniped. "Are you asking anyone to homecoming?" Raymond's mouth opened in confusion, displaying 2 rows of crooked teeth. Emery looked away in disgust. Dr. Ancelotti had done beautiful work. That's a reference to the soccer coach. Emery's teeth were perfectly straight, and her braces had come off before high school, something she had demanded. Looking at Raymond's yellow, overlapping teeth made her think of something the orthodontist had said. Asian teeth are shovel-shaped and thicker than normal teeth. Emery had remained silent and uncomfortable when presented with this information. Her mother had bristled at the comment and decided not to offer Dr. Ancelotti use of their beach house after all. "No date for the dance," Noah said. His voice glittered with malevolence. He gyrated his shoulders. "Not me," Raymond said. He smiled bashfully and bowed his head. "I don't ask anyone." "Oh, come on," Noah said. "You can't go alone. You must have a crush." While Noah patronized Raymond, Emery's attention was stolen by a presence in the doorway and Errol's loud greeting. "Scotty boy!" Scott Winan had stopped to tell Errol some gossip about college scouts coming to their game that afternoon. Emery watched Scott as discreetly as she could. His cheeks always had rosy splotches, which she found achingly attractive. My model for this was Stephen from Laguna Beach. "What are you doing in advanced Latin?" Scott asked. "Well-rounded, what can I say?" Errol answered. "Latin, though?" Scott made a face. "At least I'll be able to speak another language when we graduate. So you can talk to the help? Let's see how you feel when I'm in La Liga and you're in MLS. I'd like to see you make the Red Bulls starting lineup." Scott scoffed. "I could walk onto that squad today." "Stupid confidence. This is why you're striker and I'm sweeper." Scott laughed. "See you at lunch." That's not how he would say it. That's how I would say see you at lunch. He never looked Emery's way. She felt certain he didn't know her name. Ryan had said the only thing more pathetic than going to a formal alone was convincing yourself that someone was going to ask you. Ryan's spiel was in response to Sarah's repeated assertion that John Shepard was going to invite her to homecoming. That had shut Sarah up. "Wait, Noah," Errol said. "Who are you taking to homecoming?" Noah spluttered, "I'm taking Emery." Emery ground her teeth and said nothing. Her mind spiraled into hypotheticals. What if Scott was planning to ask her to the dance, but then Errol mentioned she was going with Noah, so then Scott asked someone else? Errol, for his part, was not invested in the answer. "Oh, nice." Errol drew Emery into conversation as they exited the classroom and deftly, though inadvertently, angled Noah out of it. This was always happening to Noah, and he held it against Emery even though she never meant for it to happen. One minute, he was by her side laughing at something stupid Lila did. The next, he was shunted to the conversational badlands by Errol. Errol asked if she had ever been to Mont Tremblant. Of course. Had he ever been to Park City? Duh. They said Okemo at the same time and shared a laugh. Noah rolled his eyes. "We should do a group trip," Errol said, "with Scott and Candace and whoever." Emery crossed her fingers and put her hand in her pocket. "That could be cool," she said. The Darrymore student body was one of the most well-traveled populations in the world, but a small number of places dominated the conversation. The Vineyard, the Hamptons, the Outer Banks, OBX in the text, Aspen, Kiowa, Big Sky, Provincetown. They shared a local consciousness, and if you didn't know the candy shop in the back of the water sports store, Force 5, or what back bowls referred to, or what getting stung by a man-o'-war entailed, you laughed along and pretended you did. "East Coast trails are too short," Errol said. "But you become a better skier in icy conditions," Emery said. "Fair. What about you, Noah?" Errol asked. "East or west, Manifest Destiny or the Orient?" Noah froze. Nothing had indicated that Errol was aware of Noah trailing behind them. "Noah can't ski," Emery said.